哦，啊，那不能给咱们生个多那家讲罗呢？
His Holiness is asking if anyone can see him. Can you hear me in Palpun Shadda? Please raise your hand. Okay. I think maybe some don't hear because they're raising their hands. Anyways, but there's nothing to do. First of all, I'd like to wish you all a Taishdalek. And so today we will continue speaking about the topic of Gampopa's life. Yesterday I spoke about the conditions that made Gampopa wish to see Lord Milarepa. So in general, the life stories, the liberation stories of Gampopa give two different accounts of how Lord Gampopa came to have the intention or the wish to see Milarepa. So the one is as I described yesterday, and the other is as in described in Dusen Kemba's dialogues with Gampopa. And that says that when Gampopa was in Pembo, that he met the three beggars, and that seems a little bit more likely. So I think that that one is more likely true. In any case, so Gampopa thought to himself, if I went straight to Milarepa without asking the Kadampa gurus first, it wouldn't be right. So he went to all the gurus in U and Pempo, and he went to say, I'd like to go see Milarepa, so please grant me permission. So generally, the Kadampas were very reluctant to practice the secret mantra openly. And in particular, he was going to a place where there were tantric householders. And so they thought, for that reason, what they must have thought, that he would probably become some sort of a ngakpa, a tantric practitioner. And so, because they thought that, it was difficult for him to get permission at first. But in the end, they agreed. And so the teachers at Gyayundak said, Milarepa must be a siddha, so take the teachings Dharma with them, but bring them back to us. But do not discard these Kadampa robes. We've all gotten old. And so we're getting close to death. So you absolutely must return. And so he said, and they also gave him a gift of provisions for the journey. Generally, when you think about the teachers of Gampopa, Gyacharigwa or Gyayunda, the reason why they were all called Gya is probably because they were from the Gya clan, so they're called the Gya. I think that's what some people might think that means that Gya might mean Chinese. Some people that means that they're from China. So some people, in order to prove that Gampopa's view, they think that Gampopa's view of Mahamudra is the view of the Gyana Hashangs, of the Chinese Hashangs, and so in other words, they say that his teachers were all called Gya, so they use the fact that his teachers were all named Gya as proof that they are Chinese. But at that time in Tibet, just because they're being called Gya does not necessarily mean that. And particularly at that time, it meant that they were it does not mean that they're Chinese. For example, Gya Yundak was someone who had spent his time really devoting himself to practice. And so he gave he actually gave Gampopa the instructions, particular instructions on non-thought from Je Gompoa. And also he gave there are texts about the Mahamudra instructions from Gompawa. Some of Gompawa's later way of teaching Mahamudra. So Gampopa's way of teaching Mahamudra and Gompawa's way of teaching were pretty much exactly the same. So I think probably from Gyayunda, he probably received the instructions of Gompawa's Mahamudra instructions. So I think Gampopa must have received those from him, from Gyayunda. In any case, Lord Gampopa asked for permission from the Kadampa Lamas, and he went with his friend Gongchen to in Tibet. He was really insistent, so he was in such a hurry that he didn't eat much on the tree, and he didn't sleep much on the way. So when they got to the plain of Gurmun Sang, Gongchen got very sick and was unable to keep going, and so they had to rest a few days. So at that time, so Gongchen was the sort of person who didn't think anything at all, and so Gongchen thought, I'm not going to get better immediately. And Gampopa's in such a rush to see Milarepa. He doesn't. I don't know if maybe he'll leave me here. But he is a good person, so I need to think of some way to do this. I need to make some way to make him not leave me. I have to do something to make him feel like make him not leave me. And then he said to Gampopa, "Oh, it's going to be difficult for me to get better quickly. I probably won't die, but if this creates an obstacle for you for your Dharma practice, that wouldn't be good. So you go ahead. When I get better, I'll follow along." So that's what he said. And when he said that, so Gampopa thought, he must have really thought that, a friend should be exactly like you. Not should get here when we're together, and not sad when you're apart. So that's great. Thanks. And he gave Gongchen all the provisions except for the gold and tea for offering to Milarepa, and then left. Gongchen had spoken so boldly, and he didn't dare say, "Don't leave me," but in his mind he was extremely disappointed. He abandoned me when I was sick and ran off, he thought. He was so disappointed. Oh, I'm going to show him. And so when he got over, for instance, he didn't go to Tur. He didn't follow Gu, but he went down to Maid, to Kan, the region of Kan. He gathered a lot of offerings. And so the story is later, when Gampo was in Sewalung, he brought, the long Tibetan bricks of tea, the long Tibetan bricks of tea, and horses and donkeys, and he made a big show of it when he came. So there is that is recorded in the histories. So how did Gampopa's travels to meet Milarepa go? Well, when he was on the road, he met some merchants, and he traveled with them for a fortnight. And they came to a place that was about 2.5 days' journey from Milarepa, where Milarepa was staying. He suddenly took very ill and collapsed in an empty plain. He was unconscious for half the night, and he almost was unable to regain consciousness, about to pass away. And then when he eventually recovered his senses, he looked in the direction where Milarepa was said to be, and prayed to him. And this helped him get a bit better. So he got a little bit more strength, but he still was unable to go by foot. And so he stayed in that place for 7 days. Then there was a yogi who came along the road. So this yogi came, and so he saw that Kampopa was sick. So he took a cup of water and he mixed a bit of tsampa into it and asked him what his situation was. And then he said, "Oh, it's great to be with you." And so the yoga said this. And Kampa said, "I'm sick. I think it can be really difficult here. Why is it great to be with me? So what was great to be about being with me?" And then the yogi said, "Guru Yoga has been saying since last year that a monk from U would come, and he will benefit many sentient beings. He's been predicting this for a year. He even said the same thing the other day. So it's really great. You've got a lot of merit." When Kampopa heard this, then all of his exhaustion, all of this, all of a sudden just went away. It's like it got better, clear and fresh. And he said to the yoga, "Okay, I'm going to go with you. Let's go together." Not only did they go, the yogi said had a load that he was carrying, the big bag. "I'm going to take that and give that to me." And he said, as if he had no more sickness at all. And they went along. And on the way, the yogi said, "Kampopa will probably teach you some profound dharma. And so if you get that, please also teach it to me." So he said that to Kampopa, and when he said that, Kampopa thought that this yogi was from Tsang, right? This Tsangpa is a little bit foolish. He's a little bit kind of is spending so many years, so long with the guru, and he's saying to me, who's just coming in, saying, "Please teach me." So this is really strange. And then he asked the yogi, "Have you already received the dharma from Milarepa? I mean, how many years did you spend with the guru?" And so when he asked that, then the yogi said, "I spent 10 years with the guru. I received a lot of teachings. But the one he's giving to you is different than others." And so they had conversations like this as they went, and they came to Chuwar. This is later they built a monastery that was a great place where Milarepa practiced. And so that yogi he just disappeared. Where he went, Kampopa had no idea where he'd gone. Not knowing who it was, then he thought, "Oh, he must have been an emanation." As I said yesterday, because first there were the 3 beggars, and they had just disappeared, and he thought they were emanations. And then the yogi again, when it disappeared without a trace. And so he must have been an emanation. Then when they reached Chuwar, he reached Chuwar, and he went to beg for food and ask about Milarepa to a house. And when he went there, and so there was a woman who was weaving there, and he asked her, "Where is Milarepa?" And he asked her where Milarepa was. And she said that she could introduce him to a laywoman who knew Milarepa, and she introduced him to an old woman. And so Nyama, this is a Tibetan word for the laywoman. all of Milarepa's female students were called Nyama. Because they're on the they're called the Nyama because on the full moon or the Nyama, and on the 8th day and the new moon they practiced that, and so they're in that, and so in Neshan they also talk about Nyama, and also there are many in Sikkim. So these days there was this old woman who was introduced, and this old woman said, it'll be difficult to see Milarepa today. So this evening, tonight, stay at my house. And she brought him upstairs into the house and gave him food. And then the old woman said to him, when I went to see the Jetsun yesterday, and when I saw him, he was saying to his students, last night I had a dream. I had a silver vase that was filled with amrita, and a monk came from the east, and that monk was carrying an empty crystal vase. And I dreamt that I poured all of the amrita from the silver vase into it. So now that now the father's getting old, and I'm going to have a good son, and that son will make the teachings of the Buddha shine like the sun, and he will probably benefit infinite sentient beings. And so whoever it is who brings him to me, that person who brings him will not need to experience the lower realms, I promise, he said. And so I'll promise to bring you to the Srimad. So tomorrow I have a daughter who meditates there, and so I'll tell her. And so to please ask her to bring her to see the Jetsuns. His daughter has spent time with Milarepa meditating. And then Gambaba then thought to himself, oh, the way the Lama has been predicting me, I really must be a student who's an appropriate vessel, is really receptive. So now I probably won't have any difficulties meditating on his instructions. And so he began to feel a bit proud. He thought, now I must be something. And so when he went to see Milarepa the next day, then Milarepa knew that he had begun to feel a bit of pride, and didn't let him in, and just forgot about him for half a month. And so after a fortnight or so, and one day, a message came that the guru said to come. And so immediately Gambapa went to see Milarepa. And so at that time, Gambapa was 31. And in terms of the year, it was 1108. The other day I spoke incorrectly. I said that he was born in it said, so Spurgeon said, sometimes I have trouble reading. When I was young, I didn't study math. I studied a little bit of math, but everyone has said, well, what point is there for monks to for lamas to study arithmetic and math? The stewards and the nyarpas will take care of that. And so nowadays, and so because I didn't study, I have trouble reading the numbers. So basically, so this means in any case, in 1108, when he was 31. Jetsun Gambapa met Milarepa in Tashigang in Jin. So Jin is the name of the valley, and Tashigang is a place. And so Gambapa had brought all the gold and tea to offer to Milarepa, and he offered them, and he prostrated many times. And Milarepa said, gold doesn't agree with this old man's mind. I have no stove to boil tea. Instead, use this for your own provisions for your tea. So gold doesn't agree with this old man, you understand, right? So I don't get along with it. I don't even have a stove to boil the tea. So you use it for your own, to support yourself. And he gave it back to Gampopa. Then Gampopa joined his hands in prayer and supplicated, said, "I've come from a long way. And so please accept me with compassion." Milarepa replied, "You haven't come that far. People come to see me from Kham in India and other places. So actually, what is your name?" And at that time, Gampopa replied, "My name is Sunam Rinchen." Sunam said, Sunam, merit. Merit, you come from the great accumulation of merit. You are a jewel, a Rinchen for all beings. He said this for all beings. He said this 3 times. Later, the Jesuit said to his students, who are Repas, "Just hearing the Son of Mind's name will accomplish the benefit of infinite sentient beings." But I didn't say that aloud at that time. He probably thought it'll make Gampopa feel proud again. And so he probably didn't say it for that reason. So later, there's the founder of the Talung Kaji, the Talung Tampa, said, "This tradition of ours has two lineages: the lineage of Siddhas and the lineage of Buddhism." So from Gampopa is Buddhism. So from Gampopa on, it's lineage of blessings, and then before that, it's lineage of Siddhas. So when we talk about Rinpoches or jewels, they say, I mean, the precious, and so we say Rinpoche at the end. We say Rinchen on that. So we say Rinchen at that point, and it's not just that. So Gampopa, when he blessed his students, traditional students, so that they could easily realize Mahamudra, and he had this particular quality that he could do this. And because he was similar to a wish-fulfilling jewel, he was given the title of Rinpoche or Rinchen. And this is a really very closely, fits very well with Milarepa saying that he was like a jewel for all beings. And so then he went to Ding Chuar, and Gampopa also went down to. And so he made a hut out of. They made a hut out of grass and wood under there, and he spent there, and he used the gold and so forth to gather provisions and stuff, and things that he would need. And then he asked Milarepa for the provisions. And Milarepa gave him the Chakrasamvara empowerment and the empowerment of Vajravarahi by the Sindhara Mandala instructions on transferring and mixing. And he spent. And then at that point, Gampopa said to me, "I have really good meditation. I can meditate for 40 days continuously." Then Milarepa said, "Yeah, that's good. That's fine. But no matter how good your meditation, the only result you're going to get is going to be being reborn in the formless realm. No matter how much you squeeze sand, you'll never get oil out of it." Likewise, Gampopa and Milarepa were talking about had a conversation about Kadampa and the Tantra. And Milarepa said, like a big monster has got into Tibetan people's breasts. Atisha was not allowed to give secret mantra, and that's just ruined everything. Everything's been ruined. He said that. And then when he said that, Kadampa said, the Kadampa also have many Tibetic branches. And Milarepa said, those may be secret mantra, but they aren't pith instructions. And without the pith instructions, you won't achieve accomplishment. And meditating on the stage of the path of selfless is just meditating on the universal. It's not actually taking perception as a path. So don't close your mouth and just meditate and just do what I say and meditate upon the path of means. And so then you meditate on prana, which means tuma. So it's meant for a year meditating on it. So in total, he spent 13 months with Milarepa and received all the profound instructions of the Kaju. So then when he was 32 in 1109, Gampopa prepared to return to U in central Tibet. And Milarepa accompanied as far as a small river where there is a small stone bridge. And he said, I'm not going to cross that river. There's like an important point about interdependence here. And so now you and me, the father and son, sit down and then have a little conversation. So they sat down and he gave Gampopa, he gave a myrobalan fruit and a flint and steel to light fires. So in the past, when I had difficult times, and there was a time when I had trouble developing practicing, and at that time, I had through these instructions, I had developed experience and realization. And so at this time, you have difficulty in the future. You'll need these instructions. And so then he gave Gampopa the pointing out on the inseparability of prana and mind. And so that instruction on the pointing out of inseparability of prana and mind, it was passed down from Gampopa. And so he gave to do some Kempa the instruction in the creation and completion phases of Vajravara, this instructions of the inseparability of prana and mind, and this has become a particular feature of the Karma constant. And then Milarepa said, now actually you're probably going to be like really great paramount of great meditator. So now you must not have any arrogance about family or friend. And if you have any attachment, you shouldn't be attached at all to your relatives. You must give up on this life, be a child of the mountains, practice all Dharma in union. And I'm an old man, but continually pray to me. In particular, do not associate with people who have great desire or great hatred or great delusion, because the reason is that they're going to influence, their stains will affect you. And wherever you go, like a wounded animal, be careful and do not let your mindfulness decrease. And in your conduct, be peaceful and subdued. And I should always be very patient and forgiving. And no matter who you meet, please get along with everyone. And also be very clean, but don't think too much. So whenever you can, keep to silence, don't speak a lot, and you need to stay in strict retreat. Even though you realize your own mind to be a Buddha, do not abandon the Guru. In actuality, there's no accumulation or purification, but gather even the smallest accumulation of merit. And so though you realize karma and results have no truth, avoid even the smallest misdeed. Though you have the experience of there being no equipoise or no post-meditation, do the practice of sessions and breaks. Even if you understand yourself and others to be equal, do not denigrate the Dharma individuals. And so in this way, he gave these really important points of instruction. So you must come to, on the 14th day of the horse month in the year of the hare, you must come down to the area between Jun and Yenam. And so he said this, and then he also made the prophecy about the place of Dala Gampa. So then Gampopa at that time said, I said, precious Guru, you said a while ago that you had a profound instruction that you would give me later. Now please give it to me. So now please, I'm about to go, so please give it to me, right? And so he asked this, and right, and when Milarepa, I said, what the instructor said? Said, Milarepa, it's been so long practicing. his buttocks. So if we don't, and so it had been covered up with calluses. It just totally filled it. It was like a monkey's bottom, and so it had gotten really tough. And so he didn't have any cushions like we sit on, right? He just sat directly on the bare ground. And so he showed his bottom that had become like a monkey's. And he said, I practiced until I got like this. You also need to find some grit and determination and meditate. And so in this way, he was parted from Milarepa. So after Gampopa met Michaelis, he once again went to U. The Kadamba gurus before had told him that he said, you're going to go see Milarepa and get the instructions, but don't give up your Kadamba robes. And so as the Kadamba said, he wore the hat and the robes and the shoes as taught by the Kadampas. And when he went to them, and he went to see the Kadamba gurus, and they were very pleased. And particularly the Geshe Drepa and Geshe Chayu were very as I mentioned, Geshe Drepa is, as I mentioned, he met him on the so some say that he met him on the way to his place. And some place that he also went to Geshe Nyurumpa. And at that time, Nyurumpa said to him, what qualities developed when he met Milarepa? Well, my winds do not move inside or out, and I have realization extended, but I have great. So now it's time for you to benefit sentient beings, said Nyurumpa. And so, but Gampopa said, I'm not going to have a long life, said Gampopa, but the Japanese have predicted it. So it's better for me to practice. And Nyurumpa said, you don't need to worry about that. I have the instructions for a long life, and gave him the empowerment of White Tara. But when we look at the lineage tradition, the empowerment in the Karmakaja tradition, it says that it's passed down from Geshe Chepa, but it does not say that it's from Geshe Nyurumpa. So at that time, so if we think about, if we look at Dusum Khenpa's instruction dialects, he says that he met Geshe Drepa, but not Nyurumpa. So we need to look at that at them. Then he also went to see Gyayunda. When you met Milarepa before, and you've come back, as I told you to give you the Dharma, so now please give me all the instructions you have. And when he explained the wizard and how he developed meditation, and then the Gyayunda said, Blessed, oh, this turned out really well for you, so I think I probably also need to go see Milarepa. And so he also said that. And so this also occurred. And so also he went to Geshe Chariwa, and he received the teachings that he hadn't yet listened to. And Chariwa said, now you're just a single person, but in the future you will be very well known, and you have very vast activity and a lot of fame. So now at that time in Peiyu there was a great famine, actually, and so because the famine, he couldn't get anything. He couldn't get any provisions for his retreats. So whatever other practice he had no choice but to go anywhere else. He asked for permission to go, and he went to other places. He went to Takpo and Soga, but he didn't receive any provisions. So in the end, he went to his own homeland, and when he went there, there's a place called Sewalung, that the really pleasant place where his mother was born, named Sewalung. And so there he did meditation practice, and so before that he didn't get good food. So he didn't have any strength in his body, and because of that, his meditation did not go well. And Milarepa had earlier said to him that if you don't have the strength in your body, then you won't be able to do it. So he said, and he remembered that Milarepa told him not to continue to meditate on Tumo, and so he ate more nutritious food and ate more food, and he prayed to Milarepa every day and meditated on Tumo. He only meditated on Tumo, and he was able to gain control over the bliss and heat. As Miller had precipitated, you will have the bliss and heat will enter the expanse as Miller had predicted, and so it did occur as Miller had predicted. So at that point, that time, Kampopa did meditate a bit on Mahamudra, but he primarily meditated on Tumo. And when he achieved the power of the bliss and emptiness, then he was able to recognize the nature of mind more clearly before, and his meditation was much more clear, more vivid than before. And sometimes the images were sometimes like dreams and illusions, and sometimes they seemed really true and stable. So these experiences. Then eventually, as it improved, the external appearances. It's like they all just kind of fell apart. All the appearances just fell apart and dissolved into the nature of the mind. He had an experience like this as well. The mind itself sort of became like the nature of turned into meditation. Like everything was just conceptual projections, and so the thoughts are just like they come spontaneously. They're like travelers, and so he had this sort of great emanations that showed in their mind. And they're all just emanations of the mind. And so he had it came in from inside. And it's like all his previous practice at all sort of like an eggshell. It wasn't like it's just the outside, the shell on the outside. It wasn't the actual thing. Yeah, and so he realized that he didn't need to put any faith into confused appearances. All appearances are just, and sometimes he thought that they're just complete untrue and emptiness. Sometimes they're like untrue and like illusion. He had such experiences, and when these experiences, sometimes the meditation, since he was continually meditating, sometimes he really felt like that it's really enhancing or improving my meditation. But even that, when he looked at it earlier, it was just a little bit. It was like the realization getting a little bit deeper, but not actually improving, just getting more deeply set in. So basically, when looking at the nature of the mind, or the essence of the mind, no matter how much he looked at it, he said it's just that Lama Mipo was like the Dharmakaya. We'd see him as a human, a citizen, but actually he's by nature the Dharmakaya, and he developed real conviction in this, and felt even more devotion for the guru. And then he sang songs about the he sang songs about his realization. And he had a bodhicitta mala, and that had 21 seeds on it. And so there's a tree, and he went to there, and he said, if I've been prophesied by all the Buddhas of the 3 times, then may this, if this is true, may this bodhicitta, grow into a tree, and by the power of speaking these words of truth, then it grew, and it grew a bodhicitta tree, and that tree is, and they say that you can even still see this old tree. And so basically, Sewa Long, he spent 6 or 7 years practicing. And later, the cave warriors called it the cave of seeing the essence, because he'd seen the essence of the nature of mind. It was called the seeing the essence. And so, in the 7th Karmapa Acharya Gyatso went to Sewa Long, he went there and he saw this cave of seeing the essence. So there must have been the cave there. So generally, And so Gompa must have told all the way he developed his experience and realization to his students without hiding any of them. And so what he said is, if he had told the experiences of developing shamatha, it would have harmed people. But when he achieved realization, that generally when you talk about insight, when you talk about realizations, it's harmful to tell them to people. But Gompa realized that telling it would not harm them, and because he realized that it would help his students, he taught it without hiding anything. So how is it that we know about his realization and so forth? It's because he had told them to all students, and so therefore we had received them. And then when he was 39, in 1118, he went to Ulka, and he spent 3 years practicing there. So he was not 3 years. He went to Ulka. So Ulka is a place where many learned and accomplished masters practice. Tsongkhapa also spent a long time practicing there, and Longchenpa probably also went to Ulka. So many Tibetan lamas went there. It's a very important place, a very sacred place. So Ulka is the place where Lord Kampopa actually realized the nature of his mind. So Ulka is where he actually realized the nature of mind. As it says in Palmadrupa's supplication to the liberation of the Guru, when he stayed in Ulkar, he realized all phenomena, like dreams, are untrue. The unelaborate became manifest. He said, "This is my last birth. I prostrate to you, Lord of the 10th level." And so it says, as Palmadrupa said, the place where he actually realized the nature of mind was there. Also, Gombotsutu Nimbo, who is one of Gampopa's nephews, says Godun Simbarat. The place where he first met Lord Gampopa was in Ulka. So one day there is Gombotsutu Nimbo. So this is the uncle was Dapodim and his two nephews. So he's his older brother's younger son. So Golden Sumpa went. And he said to Gombotsutu Nimbo, I'm a bodhisattva in my last lifetime, but don't tell anyone else because they won't be able to understand it, and they'll gather misdeeds. So it's like a sign of his realization. While he was staying in Ulka, he remembered that the Jetsun Miller had told him to come return on a particular day. And he went to go see, and on the way he met Rinpoche. And Rinpoche said, the Lama's passed away, and he passed away. And so he gave him his share of the relics, and at that point, Gampopa fell unconscious. So only after a lot of water had been sprinkled on his, splashed on his face, did he regain his consciousness. And he had several little bit of gold that he was carrying, and he just tossed this all in the direction of where the Guru had passed away. And he sang songs about remembering the Guru. In case before Miller passed away, he'd left a testament, right? A written testament. He'd left a will or a testament. Give this to that student and so forth. He left a testament, right? And likewise, Miller, what said, isn't it? I have a little bit of gold that I've gathered in the course of my lifetime, and after I've died, and so you're going to need to divvy up that gold. The students are like, does Mother really have gold? How would Miller ever get gold? They're all talking about this, and later, when they went to the place, they dug up the place where he said it was. There was no gold. But there was no gold, but there was a piece of sugar, a cube of sugar. And then he'd written, next to that, there was he had written something. It said in this. So whoever says that Miller said gold would put shit in his mouth. I don't have any gold. I don't need gold at all. So you all divvy up this sugar. So he went to Ulka. Then he went back to Ulka, and so this is probably the place where he met Lord Dusum Khenpa. At Ulka, he spent 10 years at Ulka in such places. Then when he was 51 years old, in 1128, he went to Dahla Gampo. When we went to Dahla Gampo, he thought to himself, I should spend 12 years doing practice. And when he thanked him, and in the dream, there was a woman who came, whose body was smeared with ashes. She had a feather in her hand, and she said, instead of spending 10 years sealed in retreat, it's better to spend 12 years spreading the teachings. And so he decided at that point to begin gathering his students and nurturing his students. So generally, the Dampo Rinpoche's or Gampopa's way of nurturing students is that in general, in common, he taught them all the stages of the path, according to the Kadampa. He taught them the Gampopa, and then he would teach them the Sutra Mahamudra of the co-emergent yoga, and then for the particular students, he would teach the path of means of mantra. So in brief, he had the Kadampa pith instructions on as the foundation, foundation of the Smiths on that path, you have the path of the union of Mahamudra. And so in this way, of the confluence of the Kadampa and Mahamudra. And if we combine these all, the summary of this all is in the four dharmas of Gampopa, which we will discuss starting from tomorrow. And so in brief, Gampopa himself had great experience and realization and blessings. And his students, and is very good at giving instructions that were just at the right level for his students. So many of his students had experienced realization and miraculous powers all arise at the same time. And so what Gampopa said to his students, said, I had a really difficult time developing experience and realization, but it's really easy for you. So not only are the instructions profound, but there's the Kaiju has a transmission of blessing that is unlike any other. And so if you can practice, then there are many of you who will start down the path towards liberation. And so primarily for improving your meditation, removing obstacles, and developing experience, you must continually meditate on Guru Yoga. And he said there are many people who have come. There are many characteristics from a guru, but the main one there's only one that you need, and that is devotion for the guru. And so in this way, he'd be able to bring an untold number of students to ripening of liberation. So then when he was 75 in 1153, he started to get started to have a few health problems. And he said to his students, I'm not going to last for a long time. So if you want to receive any more teachings, come and take them. If you have any doubts or questions, please ask questions. But basically, when you're teaching Dharma, you don't need a lot of teachings. My instructions, the main points, keep them in your mind. And so he gave this instruction, and then before he passed away, he said all the students he came, he primarily taught them only Mahamudra. And then Gomtsul is like the primary on holding up his lineage was Je Gomtsul, and so Je Gomtsul was so thinking about please leave a testament for students in the future. When Gomtsul made that request, then the main lesson, there are many, but of course the main point there is any student or any individual who has not met me, who thinks if they read the precious garland of the supreme path and the ornament of precious realization, if you read those, it'll be no different than actually meeting me. So the appearance of the guru will disappear like a dream, but the compassion, the blessings will remain. And so if you pray, so without forgetting me, have devotion and supplicate me. And if you supplicate me, then you will have resident. And so this is not just Gampopa, but actually many masters have also said similar things. And so for this reason, sometimes when we say, I don't find a guru, so I don't have anyone to supplicate you. And they complain, we don't have any authentic gurus, we don't have any genuine gurus. They have faith and devotion, then if you pray to the gurus and the three jewels, on all of the gurus who have come from our teacher, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and there have been so many masters who have experience and realization that cover the entire earth. And if you pray to them, it means like there's like no problem of lacking people to supplicate. The question, the problem is that there are not enough people who are supplicating. The people who are praying, who are supplicating, don't have enough faith and devotion. That's the problem. So in that year, on the 15th day of the 6th Tibetan month, when the sun rose, Je Gampopa passed away. And Je Gampopa had many students who had achieved siddhas, and among them, the most famous were the four disciples who are the four siddhas, also the four who upheld the lineage, the four close sons, the four who stayed in his presence, and the two special siddhas, so the 18 siddhas. But those who had the greatest activity were the Gompa Tsotrim, who was one of his nephews, Dogen Palma Drupa was the second, Barum Dhamma Wonchuk was the third, and the Siddha Kampa Use, or white-haired Kampa, or Dusum Kempa. These were the four with the greatest activity. Those are the ones who would continue to uphold the teachings. They continue to be like the life force of the Kadampa teachings. So now I've given a life account of the life and liberation of Gampopa. So starting from tomorrow, I have to talk about the four traditions. If I only tell you stories and tell you history about Tibet, it's not okay, right? Well, that wouldn't be right. So starting from tomorrow, I will teach on the four dharmas. So actually the four dharmas, I gave you yesterday, there's only one stanza, right? But we'll give it a bit of longer explanation. I have to give it a little bit of explanation. So basically, especially in the collected works of Gampopa, there are what are the pith instructions on the four dharmas, and that are in the works of the actual disciples of Gampopa. So if I combine all of these and teach you, then I'll do as much as I can to teach you about the four dharmas of Gampopa. So thank you very much. So next we will have the concluding prayers.
Tenzin chepe gebo tambayna penjuru ge gyuri shadisho geguni ji ransu gamaba gegun chele jedu gamaba 예근 돈조 원구로 가마바 오옌론드 젤레샤데 엔스 오셴아 신변자예네 동해 심진 파르기 개바세와 삼예 최든 제시를 쇼요로 Hola.